Imagine you break your leg today. What would you do? You'd probably call for help, go to a hospital, get an x-ray, and within hours, a doctor would know exactly what was wrong. Your leg would be aligned, stabilized, and eventually placed in a cast. Painful? Absolutely. But you're probably going to be okay. Now imagine the exact same thing happens to you. 50,000 years ago, no hospital, no x-ray, no plaster cast, no ambulance, no painkillers. You're lying on the ground with a broken leg, and you have no idea if you'll ever walk again. So how did ancient humans survive something as simple and potentially deadly as a broken bone? The first thing we need to understand is that the broken bone itself wasn't always the biggest danger. Your body actually has an incredible ability to repair bone. When a bone breaks, the body immediately begins repairing it. Blood collects around the fracture, new tissue forms, then new bone gradually develops and strengthens the damaged area. So in theory, your body already had its own repair system. But there was a problem. You had to stay alive long enough for it to work. And 50,000 years ago, that was much harder. Imagine you can't walk, you can't hunt, you can't chase an animal, you can't gather food. You may not even be able to reach water without help. And you're living in an environment where the weather can turn dangerous, and predators are constantly looking for opportunities. A broken leg could leave you exposed to cold, starvation, dehydration, or attack. So the real question wasn't just, can the bone heal? It was, can the group keep you alive while it heals? And this is where ancient humans had an unexpected advantage. Each other. One of the most fascinating examples comes from a Neanderthal skeleton discovered in Shanidar Cave in Iraq. The individual, known as Shanidar I, lived roughly 45,000 to 35,000 years ago, and his skeleton tells an incredible story. He had suffered multiple serious injuries and physical problems during his life. Among them was a healed fracture in his foot. But here's what makes this remarkable. He survived those injuries and lived into an estimated age of around 35 to 45 years. For a prehistoric human with significant physical limitations, surviving that long would have been extremely difficult without some form of assistance. His skeleton doesn't tell us exactly what his group did for him, but it strongly suggests something important. He probably wasn't surviving entirely on his own. Someone may have helped him obtain food. Someone may have helped him move. Someone may have protected him. And that changes the way we think about prehistoric survival, because maybe the most important survival tool wasn't a weapon, or a shelter, or even fire. It was the group. But how would they actually deal with the broken bone? Here's where we have to be careful. We don't have a prehistoric medical textbook telling us exactly how every hunter-gatherer treated fractures, and we shouldn't pretend they had modern casts. But they didn't necessarily need modern medicine to give the bone a chance to heal. The basic principle is incredibly simple. Keep the broken area still. Materials like wood, bark, animal hide, plant fibers, or other natural materials could potentially have been used to support or bind an injured limb. But exactly how these methods were used by people 50,000 years ago is often impossible to know. What we do know is that ancient bones sometimes show clear evidence of healing. And healed bone means something very important happened. The person survived. But there's another problem. What happens if you're injured far away from your group? Imagine you're hunting. You fall, your leg breaks, and the rest of your group is hundreds of meters away. Suddenly, everything becomes more dangerous. You can't run, you can't climb, you can't defend yourself properly, you can't even guarantee that you'll make it back to shelter. A relatively simple injury could become a life-threatening situation, and this may help explain something fundamental about human evolution. Humans didn't just survive because we were individually strong. We survived because we were good at helping one another. Think about what happens after the injury. You're lying beside the fire. You can't hunt, so someone else brings you food. You can't collect water. Someone else does it. You can't gather firewood. Someone else carries it. You can't protect yourself. The group stays close. For days, maybe weeks. Your survival depends on people who aren't injured, and that's an enormous evolutionary advantage. A wolf with a badly broken leg is in serious trouble. A human with a badly broken leg might still have a chance if there are other humans around. And this is where the archaeological record becomes fascinating. Bones can actually preserve evidence of survival. A fresh fracture is one thing, but a fracture that has healed tells a completely different story. It means the person didn't die immediately. They lived long enough for their body to repair the damage. Sometimes the healed bone can even show how the injury affected the person's movement afterward. And prehistoric skeletons contain many examples of traumatic injuries that healed before death. These aren't just marks on bones. They're evidence of people who survived something that could have killed them. But surviving the injury was only the beginning. Once the bones started healing, the person still had to live. Food still had to be found. Water still had to be collected. The fire still had to be maintained. Predators still existed. And the injured person couldn't simply lie there forever. Eventually, they had to move again. The body would slowly rebuild the damaged bone. Movement would gradually return. And perhaps, after weeks or months, that person could walk again. Maybe not exactly the same way as before. Maybe with permanent damage, but alive. And that's probably the most incredible part of this entire story. We often imagine prehistoric humans as people who survived through strength. Strong hunters, strong warriors. People who could run, fight, and endure. But the archaeological evidence tells us another story. Sometimes, survival meant being weak. It meant being injured and depending on someone else. It meant allowing another person to feed you, protect you, carry things for you, wait for you. And the fact that humans were capable of doing this may have been one of our greatest survival advantages, because when one person couldn't survive alone, the group could survive for them. Today, breaking a leg is frightening, but for most of us, we know what happens next. An ambulance, an x-ray, a doctor, a cast, pain medication, physical therapy. We have built an entire system around keeping an injured person alive. 50,000 years ago, there was no such system. There was only your body, your fire, your shelter, and the people around you. And somehow, some of those people survived. We know because their bones remember. Long after their names disappeared, long after their camps vanished, long after the fires went cold, their skeletons remained. And inside those bones are tiny records of injuries they survived. Proof that someone fell, someone was hurt, someone couldn't walk, and somehow they made it back to the group, and their bone healed. Because sometimes surviving prehistoric life didn't mean being the strongest person. It meant having someone there when you couldn't stand on your own.